Hello and welcome to Manipal Dubai TV. We have here with us Meenakshi Shedde, a South Asian consultant for Dubai and Berlin film festivals. Hello ma'am, it's nice to have you here.
Hello, thank you for having me here.
So my first question is that film festivals like Dubai International Film Festival have a wide range of movies to offer to the audiences, and the filter through which they screen the films is very narrow because they accept films from all over the world, from all genres and basically all kinds of films. So what do you think is the criteria based on which they discard or accept films?
The Dubai Festival is completely international, so the criteria are the same as festivals worldwide, good festivals worldwide. Essentially, we look for high quality films. I think films that surprise us, that tell us something new about a culture or a country that we didn't know about before, or deal with a familiar subject in an unconventional way, have a different way or refreshing way of telling a story. And actually looking for basically we're looking for really original voices because it's quite easy to copy and people often play safe by copying something else or if it's a formula that worked. But for us it's very important to encourage good cinema first and last, but also when they are new and fresh voices. And also the younger generation that's addressing things in a different way, that's important for us to recognize. So actually, for me, one of the new trends of Indian cinema this year, South Asian films actually, is that it's also completely global in the making of the films. I'll give an example. So for example, earlier we used to have a section called Celebration of Indian Cinema, where a number of Indian films were typically shown. That section doesn't exist anymore. So all the Indian and South Asian films that have been selected are completely on merit in the Cinema of the World section. So this is a much tougher achievement, which I think from the outside is not always visible. Oh, there are Indian films as before, but actually they are much greater credit due to them. Simply because that section that used to be kind of reserved for them isn't there anymore. So kind of the crutch that they had has been taken away, and now they're just totally fighting for themselves on merit in the Cinema of the World section. So for example, we have Anu Menon's Waiting, and it's global in the sense it's not a traditional, you can't even call it a Malayalam film as such. Yeah, because everyone's here, where are the Malayalam films? So actually my colleague and I, my senior colleague Dorothy Wenner, who is the South Asia programmer, I'm South Asia consultant to Dubai, we go out of our way specially, other than finding really good films from all over India, to look for South Asian films in Malayalam, in Tamil and other languages, because there's such a huge diaspora audience here and real eagerness to look for what is the latest, and they're really keen to engage with them. So we're also very sorry that if we couldn't find really, we went through a lot. But Waiting comes close. And it's interesting because Anu Menon is a Tamilian married to a Malayali. She's based in London. She studied filmmaking in London. She's made a film set in Kochi, and it has Bombay actors, Nasiruddin Shah and Kalki, and it's a film in Hindi and English. This is completely global way of filmmaking, right? So it wasn't there before. Normally a traditional, say, the senior Malayalam filmmakers, Adur Gopal Krishnan or Shaji Karun or so on, they would make Malayalam films set in Kerala with Malayali actors by and large. And although they had global funding, like for example, Adur Gopal Krishnan has had his films funded by French filmmakers or NHK from Japan. So it's not as if they only had Malayali money. They had global money, but their storytelling was very rooted. And not that this one isn't, but from when you see the film, you'll understand that it's completely a global way, as I explained, a global way of filmmaking. But that's not the only one. Also, another very important film that we have from India this year is Tithi by Ram Reddy. And this film is a first film by, it's probably the first Kannada film we have at the Dubai Film Festival. It's thrilling for us to discover a great Kannada film. And this actually addresses what you were mentioning about diversity and what we look for. It's also a diversity of voices.
Yeah.
The first criteria is always first and last that it's a great film. But we're also looking for a diversity of voices. And Tithi actually, it won two important prizes at the Locarno Film Festival. It won the Golden Leopard Award in the section called Directors of the Present, Cineasti del Presente, and also the Swatch Best First Film Award in that same section. So this is fantastic for a first film. It's the first feature film he made and he's up there. So we've got that film here. We also have For the Love of a Man, a docu-feature on the fans of Rajinikanth, the big Tamil star.
Yeah.
And this explores this completely crazy, insane fandom that doesn't exist anywhere on the planet. Like not the fans of Tom Cruise or Nicole Kidman, or in France, Gérard Depardieu, or Bong Joon-ho in Korea, like any big film star in the world. They don't have fans like this. Yeah, this is not to belittle anyone, but just that there is an insane level, their whole existence seems to be derived from the fact that they are fans and they feel responsible. They feel it's a big responsibility being a Rajnikant fan. Now, this film was at the Venice Film Festival in the classic section, right? Then we have Dhanak, which was, we have Dhanak, which means rainbow, a children's film. That won 2 prizes in the Berlin Film Festival. And it won the Crystal Bear in the children's generation section for children, and also the Children's Jury Prize there. And we have, very importantly, a film that was banned in India, a superb documentary called Battle for Banaras by Kamal Swaroop. So that's a very rich and diverse, different kinds of voices, different kinds of cinema, docus, features, very different. But we also have 3 other important films from South Asia. Well, there's Biba Boys by Deepa Mehta. She's chairperson of the International Jury for the Muir Awards. And Habiba Boys is, has Sikh Gangsters in Vancouver. That's really global, but she's already, it's a Canadian film and she's Canada based. But there's also 2 other important films from South Asia. There's Song of Lahore, made by Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy, who's a very accomplished Pakistani director. She had actually won the Oscar before for her earlier film called Saving Face, on a doctor who does reconstructive surgeries for women who've had acid thrown on them. And he's a UK-based Pakistani origin doctor who comes every year to do, for free, reconstructive surgery to help them get a life again because they're horribly distorted. She won an Oscar for that, and now her next film is here called Song of Lahore. It had a beautiful, beautiful screening last night on the beach. It was an open-air screening. So it's basically about how, under General Zia's rule, music was banned as part of the whole return to Islamization and going back to the Sharia, as music is haram. So a lot of musicians lost their voices and studios were shut down. And through this film, a lot of the old studios are revived. The old musicians come back because he's no longer in power. And then they play lots of really beautiful music, Pakistani music, but also Hindustani music, because at one time it was one country with beautiful Oriental instruments. And they also play jazz. Then they finally go and play a beautiful jazz standard, Dave Brubeck's Take 5 at the Lincoln Center in New York. And those musicians were playing here at the Dubai on the beach in an open-air screen. It was wonderful yesterday. And the last was a Sri Lankan film called Dark in the White Light by Vimukti Jaisundara. And it was also the Locarno Film Festival. And a lot of Vimukti's earlier work has been at the Cannes Film Festival, at the Venice Film Festival. He's very accomplished. And we have his film here. So it's a very, very rich panorama of films we have here, yeah.
Do you think there's a scope of expansion for regional films to come into these film festivals, or is there a lack of participation by them?
It works both ways, you're right, it's a good question. So I've always represented India and South Asia. So for me, Bollywood was an important voice, but it's only one voice in the Hindi language. For me, Hindi is not greater or lesser than Malayalam or Tamil or Telugu or Marathi or Bengali. It's just one important language, but it's not lesser or greater. I don't judge languages. I just judge great cinema. So usually we've had in previous years many times big Bollywood films and stars coming and so on. But for me, I always represent Indian cinema, of which there is Bollywood, but there's also rich. And I think it's very important. I do very much respect Bollywood because India is the only country in the whole planet where Hollywood is not even 10% of the market, and in a free market economy. That's something to be really proud of, because in a lot of countries around the world, for example in Iran or China or even in Korea, in France, there are quota systems, or there's huge subsidies given to promote their own films. Like in France, there's huge amounts of money, subsidy given for the promotion, for the production, for the distribution, for the exhibition of French films. There are quotas in television and radio for French music, French films, which promote their own culture. In Korea, they've had quota systems. That China is controlled. That Iran is controlled. India is a free market economy. Hollywood has been in India for 100 years, more than 100 years. It's a free country, and with all their big, aggressive marketing budgets and all their Tom Cruises and Steven Spielbergs, they still have not more than 10% of the Indian market. And that is a fantastic tribute to the power of Indian cinema. Bollywood is not necessarily greater or lesser than Hollywood in my eyes. At least our shit rather than their shit. But there's great mainstream films in Bollywood and Hollywood. There's great independent films in India and America. So I don't think you can tar a whole film industry with a brush. You need to look at each film on merit. So our role has always been to see if there's a great mainstream film, that's fine, but always to represent all of Indian cinema and all of South Asian cinema, regardless of where it comes from, regardless of the language. And I think the diversity is important. Also, we're aware of the diaspora audience here, but really to take your point a little further, I think it's important to have mainstream films and Bollywood films and stars, because when people come to see those films, very, very often it opens up the gates to other Indian films which otherwise you'd never see. Like Kannada film, like the world is not rushing off, stomping their hooves to go and see a Kannada film, but people say, oh, is this star here? Oh God, what was that? Let's check it out. They might otherwise see a small jewel of a film, which otherwise they might not actually sitting at home buying online tickets think, oh, do I really want to see this Kannada film? But if they're at the Mall of the Emirates, oh, let's check it out, right? So it's an important gate opener to a lot of other diverse cinemas, which otherwise may not have had the same chance. So I think their coexistence is important. And I think because mainstream films are kind of hardcore masala with stars. They're not always nuanced, they're not always delicate, they're not always questioning important political, social issues in that country of that time, because their interest is different, their focus is entertainment. So I think we really need the other cinemas which do these things to together holistically give you a really interesting picture of the whole country and what's actually going on. For example, Battle of Banaras tells you lots of things about the country, or even a film like Tithi, or all of them are telling you about different revelations about the country that would not necessarily have come from a masala film. So I think together they really complement each other really well. Yeah.
We're very proud of the fact that India is a democratic country and we have freedom of press, but the recent times tell us otherwise. For example, the very example of the Battle of Banaras being banned in India, and then the whole FDI issue, the meat ban issue, the issue over what Amir Khan said about India being an intolerant country. So do you think, what is your personal stance on this? Do you think it has the potential to become better or worse, or where are we heading towards?
I think there's lots of concerns about what's going on in India right now. I think it's particularly to the credit of the Dubai International Film Festival to show a film like Battle for Banaras by Kamal Swaroop, which is banned in India. It didn't have to show that, but it did chose to. First of all, it's a very good documentary, and it talks of a lot of nuances and lots of strategic moves that are going on in the planning and the media. A lot of cunning strategy that are used in warfare anywhere in the world, also in elections worldwide, but specifically in Varanasi, from where Narendra Modi became Prime Minister, won. And it's looking at the run-up to those elections. And it's doing it with a lot of solid theoretical framework based on Elias Canetti's book, Crowds and Power. So it has a lot of theoretical underpinnings to it. And it's looking at them, through the lens of mythology and many other lenses to make sense of the chaos that's going on there. It's a very powerful and important film. And I think it's really to the credit of the Dubai Film Festival to choose to showcase a film like that, which is a sign of, it's an important political signal it's also sending out through its creative choices. You're absolutely right. Democracy is under siege in India, but it's also under siege in many other countries of the world. We don't have a monopoly on our democracy being threatened. And I think it's really up to the citizens to fight for what is theirs. And the fight is much tougher in many other countries. We have actually taken a lot for granted in India, which you cannot take for granted elsewhere in the world. So we do already have a lot of privileges. But you're absolutely right. They're tremendously under threat from a right-wing government that have curtailed many, many, many terrible things that should have been our democratic rights and freedoms. But when you speak of something of freedom of the press, I think the greater irony is not that the press is specifically being suffocated and controlled. There is that, of course, there's no doubt about it. But I think the much greater and much more insidious threat is actually from within, because a lot of the media are themselves, well, some of the big voices are partly owned by huge media giants and corporates who are sympathetic to the right-wing government in power, or they want to be their good books, and there is a lot of self-censorship. So it's not that somebody outside is suppressing you and throwing you in jail because you wrote this or that piece, but tremendous amount of, and I think that's much more dangerous, self-censorship that's going on by the corporate owners of the media, people who want to suck up to the government or are very, maybe funding the government in different ways or funding election campaigns, or there's a lot of close connections there. And I think it is a tremendously difficult time for the minorities in India. And I think it's really a huge battle to be fought there. And it's up to us to preserve the plurality. And India has had a long culture of what's called a Ganga Jamuni culture of inclusion and respect for minorities. And it's important for us to realize that the more we say, oh, Hindus are the only religion or the only race that exists in India, and the others should not exist, or we shouldn't care about them. And I think those who say that, it would be worthwhile for them to understand that every time there is this action reaction kind of situation, and it just leads to a long chain of some more bomb blasts from this side, some more murders and killings from that side, and reprisals and revenge. So it's not as if you suppress them once, you won the game, and it's a zero-sum game, because you're just setting off and making sure the chain of violence continues. And actually, it's a surefire recipe for destabilization. And if you're proud, or you're trying to promote India as an economic superpower, we're the biggest market other than China, and our Prime Minister goes with to desperately to several countries, persuading them, pressurizing them, begging them to invest in India because we are such a big market, and the country is in such a turmoil and politically explosive situation. They're not fools. They're not going to invest in India if they see it in front of their eyes every day. There's riots and burnings, and thousands of people fleeing their homes, and their houses are being torched. That's not the first place that I want to invest my money, right? So it's a completely short, a two-faced policy that's completely self-destructive. And I don't think people who are planning these strategies are aware. They're actually, it's like a Hanuman setting his own tail on fire, and it's setting Lanka on fire. That's not so smart at all.
My final question is that there's always been a collaborative relationship between Hollywood and Bollywood. So like, for example, Priyanka Chopra, starring in a Hollywood TV show. So, do you think this is undermining, Bollywood culture? Like, we're becoming more Western by the day. So, do you think it's undermining what we want to, how we want to portray our culture?
Very, very good question. I think. As I said, Hollywood has been in India for over a century. So they've always had a presence. Usually they've distributed their own films, but they've been very aware of the markets, because, for example, the big Hollywood blockbusters have been released in India always in 4 languages, in English, but also dubbed in Hindi, Tamil and Telugu. So they've always been aware of the all India market, the Hindi market, but also the South Indian market for Tamil and Telugu. So they've, in a way, been possibly much more alert about the South Indian market than Bollywood. Bollywood is always sure of itself in North India and Bombay, and they never really cared too much about the South Indian market. Also because those cinemas are very strong. I mean, in many times, the Tamil industry, or the Telugu industry in particular, have produced more films a year than Bollywood. It's just that, and Bollywood is not more than 1/4 or 1/5 of Indian cinema. It gets so much publicity. Nobody knows much outside India of the Tamil and Telugu films, but very often those films, the production of those films is much greater than Bollywood in any given year, or about the same. So I think since the great thing is, since Hollywood has started coming to India and more aggressively co-producing films, they've been having just productions in India as well as distribution, Bollywood studios are then forced to be on their toes, because they were always taking things for granted and saying, we are badshahs in our own country or in our own subcontinent. But I think the presence of Hollywood has really galvanized the whole system. For example, a filmmaker like Murugadas, he wasn't really taken seriously by Bollywood. Okay, he had one Ghajini, it wasn't, it isn't that his career in Bollywood was assured as a result of that one massive hit, which was already a remake of his own film in Tamil. But it was Hollywood that actually signed a 3-film deal with Murugadas, which Bollywood hadn't done. So Hollywood is able to anticipate things like, they don't care about the color of the money. If it's in Punjabi and Assamese and, Manipuri, they would sign it. For them, every penny counts. Whereas Bollywood thinks, we are cats. We don't, those Andu-Gundu guys, those Madrasi guys, those South Indians. So they never treated them, I feel, with really the respect they deserved. Those guys. But then, they never really took them seriously. And a film like Chennai Express tells you very significantly, I think, that Hollywood is now trying to co-opt the South Indian cinemas, where such a big emperor of Bollywood like Shah Rukh Khan is actually doffing his hat to Rajinikanth in a film like Chennai Express. And that whole song and Talaiva is really a tribute to a South Indian star, which is Rajinikanth, right? Yes. So Shah Rukh doesn't have to do it, but they're smart. So now they're changing their strategy. You wouldn't have found a film like this 10 years ago, where a Bollywood star is actually acknowledging a South Indian star and tributing him, but they also want Rajni fans to come and see Chennai Express, right? I mean, they're not fools. It's clearly about the market. But now they're changing their strategies, and those Andu-Gundu guys are now suddenly, okay, maybe you're something, So I think it's very good that there's now respect for different kinds of cinema. So the other funny thing is, we're also getting to tell our own stories. So make no mistake about this, Hollywood is in India only to make money. They don't care about the color of the money. They're there to make money, as they are in anywhere in the world, right? They're there for the business. So if a Bollywood film is making money, they will invest in a Bollywood film. If a Tamil film is making money, they will. So they have actually they have produced films in Hindi, in Bollywood, in Tamil, in Malayalam. And now all the other Bollywood studios like Eros and everybody else, they're also having offices in South India and now making films in South Indian languages, which they didn't do earlier. Eros was basically the heart of Bollywood. It made films in Hindi. But with this competition, they're also... So this is actually giving more opportunities to Indian filmmakers to make films in their own language. The big Hollywood studios in India are Disney, they're Viacom, they're all making Hindi films. They're not making American films, they're not making Gora films, they're not making American storylines, because they want to work in the local market and make money in the local market. So they will make more masala. They're not bringing, Gora stars or Gora storylines or remakes. I mean, they may remake some of their own products. Like if Disney has some rights to their own library, they might remake because it's cheaper, it's their own in-house film. Chalo yaar, ye bhi kar le in Hindi. That's possible. But they are there to make money, so they're making local films in the local language, local content. So it's not necessary that we are copying more of Hollywood films because they're there. Actually, ironically, the reverse may be true, because I remember a Bollywood screenwriter had given an interview, and somebody had asked him, do you think with Hollywood coming, you've no chance because now only remakes of Hollywood films? He said, no, I'm most grateful that Hollywood has come, because all these years, Bollywood guys were just chorifying the Hollywood storylines without credit or anything, just whack the story and redo it here with Indian stars. And he said, now that those offices of Hollywood are more active and alert, they will just slap such a big lawsuit on you, you'll be in jail for the rest of your life. So they don't dare do that now. Now, he said earlier, the Bollywood producers didn't give him time of day. They said, get lost. And now, like, we don't want to know. They'll throw a DVD at me, Hollywood DVD, and say, rewrite this in Hindi. They never wanted to hear his original story. And now, because Hollywood has come to our doorstep, they're saying, Arey yaar, kuch hai to zara bata dena. If you have an original story, please come to us. So we're actually also getting a chance to tell our own stories because Hollywood is here. So it's interesting. There are many contradictory things going on. Yeah.
I have one final question, and that is, sometimes to get representation in world cinema, Indian cinema tends to become very stereotypical. Like, they have this exaggerated accent, and they rely on stereotypes formed by the other characters in the film. So do you think that has a negative impact on how the world views India as a nation?
I don't think you can... good question. I don't think you can do away with stereotypes. Typically, they're made in mainstream films or broad brushstroke films, or films that are aiming for a global audience. In the same way that, say, Hollywood aims at a global audience. So you don't find too many nuances there. For example, somebody sitting in Japan or Turkey or Colombia who doesn't understand English is very clear who's in love with whom and who's the villain and what happens at the end, right? Even if you don't understand the language, which is what Bollywood is about. Anyone sitting in, Nigeria or Kenya who doesn't know the language, or Colombia or Peru, completely understands a Bollywood film. Who's in love with whom, whose daddy is not allowing the marriage, and who's eloping and happy ending. You're very clear, even though you don't know the language. So the mainstream films operate on stereotypes. But we have a whole range, as you see here in Dubai, the films that I just mentioned. There are no mainstream films, as it turns out, this year. It's an exceptional year where we don't. Normally, we do have, a big Bollywood film and stars, and we also have a range of other regional language films. But those films, for example, take Tithi. What stereotypes is it telling you? Tell me. There aren't any. It's using non-actors in a small, mostly farmers, in a small village near Mysore. It's in Canada. And the actors kind of act themselves. They're non-actors. So what stereotypes? They're just playing themselves in a way. So there are no stereotypes in that film, right? So I think certain mainstream cinemas use that technique. But a lot of the range, films that the Dubai Festival stands for, which is a whole range of programming, I don't think they pander to those stereotypes at all. Yeah.
So this wraps up our interview. Thank you so much for speaking with us. Very well said. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you.
This was Meenakshi Shedde, and keep watching Manipal Dubai TV for more. Thank you.